One of America's most remarkable museums sits at the centerpiece of a world-famous racetrack. The rolling grounds of Barber Motorsports Park are dotted with unique sculptures, and the Barber Motorsports Museum features hundreds of two-wheeled masterpieces. Every year, the museum welcomes nearly 250,000 visitors, and they all love magnificent machines. Welcome to Top Coat's Magnificent Machines. And just when you think you've seen it all, you wind up here at the Barber Vintage Motorsports Museum in Birmingham, Alabama. Over 1,000 cars and motorcycles on display, every one of them a rolling work of art. This week, we're just going to focus on those that have hit the racetrack. And there's a lot to see, so let's get started. You're looking at a 1964 Ferrari Formula One car, the Type 158. It was significant because it won the World Championship that year, but even more important because John Surtees did the driving. That year, he became the first man to have won a World Championship on 4 wheels and on 2.
This one's got a lot of history with it. It's, actually it's a 4-stroke, 4-cylinder MV that John Surtees used this bike and others in his stable to win his World Championship for MV Agusta in 1956. He went on in 57, 58, and 59 to do so as well. So it's a very historical machine. The bike was actually acquired through our relationship with John Surtees when he was still alive. His father owned a motorcycle shop, and he started his racing career as a mechanic and riding at the same time. So not only could he understand the motorcycle's responses and handling and stuff, he could interpret that and relay it over to a mechanic that was tending to the bike at the same time.
Surtees certainly wasn't the only big name on the MV mark. What other bikes do you have here on display from other riders?
Oh, we have a lot of names in the stable. You go back to John Hartle, you can look at Phil Reed, rode for MV Agusta. Giacomo Agostini rode for MV Agusta. I think even Kenny Roberts threw his leg over an MV at one time. So it's not just one name, which was Surtees. It was a lot of names, but it's the MV Agusta marquee itself that paired with these people that really made history.
John Surtees was the only man to win a world championship on 2 wheels and on 4, but he wasn't the only person to compete in both. Mike Halewood was a Formula One racer later in his career, but he got started in the bikes in 1958 at the Isle of Man TT. He went on to win 9 championships, and he finished his career at the Isle of Man on this Ducati in 1979. Now, Ducati, of course, was always one of the brands that was pushing the envelope of speed, performance, and beauty, and it's just one of the many makes here on display at the Barber Museum. In this modern motorsports era, it's all about the mega team and the giant sponsorships. But back in the old days, it was more like this with the Morbidellis. This is the section we have that's a monument to the good old days, isn't it?
Giancarlo Morbidelli, he's an Italian industrialist. He's very passionate about motorcycles. Although his family business was woodworking and woodworking tools, he was able to take that engineering aspect and develop it into the bike manufacturing. Giancarlo started out designing the 125 and went on to develop a 50cc GP bike, a 125 GP bike, which he won 2 world championships with the builder's title. He went on to do 250, 350, and of course the 500cc bikes. Moderately successful in all areas, but the 125 really put his name on the map, and he went on to take that design, sell that design, and that became the MBA that we see on the tracks today.
Now, you can Google this museum or look it up online and check out the pictures, but it doesn't do it justice. You need to come and see it. This place is magnificent, to say the least. Tell me about the collection here. How did it start?
Well, how much time do you have? Really, this goes back about 30 years. The collection started as a car collection, and it was a private collection of a businessman here in Birmingham. When I came to work 30 years ago with it, they were just kind of getting off the ground, and motorcycles had just been introduced into the concept.
Just how big is it?
Well, when we first moved out here, we had 450 motorcycles, and we thought, wow, this is a large collection. Today, we're over 1,600. We have a staff of 4 guys in the restoration shop that their full-time job is motorcycle and car restoration. So it is an ongoing process. As I said, it's a living museum. This is something that, yes, we're preserving motorcycles and we're preserving cars, but it also provides a purpose to come to Birmingham for people who otherwise would not come to Birmingham.
There are almost 900 acres of grounds here at Barber Motorsports Park, and it is just that. It's a park complete with sculptures like you'd see in any other park. They're beautiful and some are quirky, and I don't think anyone is more quirky than this one we found in the restoration shop. It's about a 12-foot tall stack of automotive horns. I guess you could say there's a cornucopia of things to see here at the park. Do not go anywhere. We have more of Top Coat's magnificent machines coming up after this.
Top Coat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by Steel Rubber Products, quality crafted rubber parts and weather stripping. Clamp Tight, the clamp making tool. And by Top Coat, the best coatings in the world.
Welcome back to Top Coat's Magnificent Machines. Board track racing was an important part of the American racing landscape in the 1910s and 1920s. And if you were a motorcycle rider, this was how you fulfilled your need for speed. Now, of course, the tracks were made of wood, so they didn't last very long, and board track racing itself didn't last very long either. With the onset of the Great Depression, board track racing was gone forever. America would have to wait another quarter century before the high banks rose again over Daytona. In the 1970s, Yamaha's goal was to dominate the American racing scene, and this is where their efforts started. In 1973, Jarno Saarinen came to Daytona for the first time on a bike tuned by Kel Carruthers. Now, Carruthers finished second, but Saarinen finished first in his rookie year. And within 4 years, almost every bike in the Daytona 200 field was a Yamaha. By the way, the road rash you see on the side of this, well, that's not from the race itself. That was after the race when the team threw the bike into a trailer and took it home. It was rubbing on another bike, and the museum has left it like it is. Lots of great bikes in the Daytona 200 throughout its history, and you have some great ones here. Let's talk about this 1990 Ducati.
Yeah, well, the Ducati was actually a Pro Twins championship bike from 1990-1991. It was ridden by Stephen Matthews. The stable was Faraci's stable. He actually raced out of there, and Faraci tuned the bike. Very successful machine. Really the whole purpose in racing was to create that transition between the race bike on the track and the bike someone rode to the races with. And the twin series of the Ducati really emulated that, and that was kind of the Ferrari of its day. So it was a very prestigious machine.
Now let's talk about the bike that started Honda's foray into the superbikes.
Well, your Honda RC30 and the name Two Brothers Racing kind of went hand to hand, and then you add Freddie Spencer to the equation, you really had the makings of a successful program. And the RC30 dominated on the short tracks as well as the speedway tracks such as Daytona. And looking back in time, a privateer had a lot of great equipment at his availability, but the manufacturers were able to use some really cutting-edge technology. It would not be unusual at that time for just a rear shock to be a $30,000 to $35,000 investment, just for the handling aspect of it.
No racing motorcycle collection would be complete without a bike from Miguel Duhamel, and you have a great example here.
Right, yeah, Miguel's been a dominant name in racing all through the late 90s and into the 2000s. The bike we have is this 1999 Supersport Daytona winner. Very interesting story on the bike. At that time, class rules required very minimal modifications. As to the name of the class is super stock. The bike had to be stock, so you could do a little bit of ignition work, a little bit of carburation work, or then you could, maybe tweak your compression just a little bit. But the biggest gains were found in suspension. That particular bike had state-of-the-art suspension with it. As the name says, it was a stock bike, quote unquote. Miguel was very successful with it.
Well, I've never actually seen a unicorn, but I have seen this. Now, Jeff, tell me the story of the Briton.
Well, the Briton is a very unique story. It's one of 10 motorcycles built by John Briton out of New Zealand. It's very unique in the fact that it kind of throws away the rule book as far as how a race motorcycle should be built. It's a V-twin. The engine is the frame, uses a lot of carbon fiber. And as far as notoriety from a manufacturer, I mean, Britain is a name that stands alone in the motorcycle field, and they only had one bike.
We all love our toys and we want them to look their best. Now a machine like this motorcycle in particular can't be hard to take care of unless you have Top Coat F11. Top Coat F11 is the only product in the world you can safely and confidently use on everything. When you look at a bike like this, not only do you have an engine and exhaust, even denim paint, which some people call matte paint, it is really hard to take care of all those surfaces, but you can do it all with one product, right, Scott?
Absolutely. Well, and you know, it's also really unique because you're taking that one product, you're doing everything. Now, whether it's a modern bike, whether it's a classic bike, it doesn't matter. You know, the whole point is what? I mean, at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? You can get a beautiful, you know, I call it the wow factor, right? Amazing depth of image, amazing shine, but it's really about the protection. But to me, it's about riding. It's about having fun and knowing that you don't have to put a lot of detailing time into it. So that's where F11 really shines. It's very simple, it's very effective, but you get amazing protection. And you know, as Mike said, we're not just talking paints. And by paints, look at this. This is a denim finish. This is a matte finish. You can't put other products on this surface without ruining it. Well, Top Coat F11 is designed for that, so it's absolutely amazing.
And it makes life so much easier. It'll not only protect it, make it easy to keep clean, but all your other toys, your dirt bikes, your ATVs.
Yeah, has everything here.
Yeah, the mud's easier to clean off, and it's just so much easier to maintain. So to learn more, go to topcoat.tv.
Well, if you were like me, you grew up loving the motocross bikes. And as I look around here, I see over 24 brands of motorcycles that hit the whoop-de-doos in the big jumps. They are all spectacular and exactly what you would expect from the Barber Vintage Motorsports Museum. We'll be right back with more of Top Coat's magnificent machines right after this. Welcome back to Top Coat's magnificent machines. You know, the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy, or the Isle of Man TT, is one of the most dangerous races of any kind anywhere in the world, but it's also one of the most spectacular. And in 1960, Jeff, one familiar name made its debut, right?
Yes, Honda decided to step into the world arena by entering the Isle of Man race. Their stable consisted of about 6 bikes. We're not really sure of the exact number. Honda's not quite sure of the exact number. But they showed up in full force and they brought in a bike that's really unique. It's a 4-cylinder, 4-stroke, 4-valve per cylinder. The bike would turn about 16,000 RPMs when it was pushed. So the sound was totally different, presentation was totally different, and it was a unique venture for them. They didn't win, they didn't even place very well, but what they were able to do was get information about racing. And the rest is history. They went on through their progression with the 6 cylinders and the 5 cylinders and the 4 cylinders, and of course now Honda is a predominant name in racing today.
One of the most important nameplates in motorcycle racing is Yamaha. This is a TD1A from 1963, and it really started Yamaha's success in the realm of motorcycle road racing. The museum here has a magnificent collection of Yamahas, but all of these bikes have one common ancestor. It's called the Yellow Tanker, and only 10 of them were ever made. And of course, the museum has 3 of them.
And these were kind of mythical bikes. People talked about them, but there's really no documentation at the time about them. But in doing research and stumbling across, we did locate 3 of the bikes. And it was all from a lead on the sticker that said YT250. And we started doing the research, tracking down names, tracking down documentations, and located 2 of the bikes in Ohio. And one of the bikes was in Australia by way of Ohio. So we've actually reunited the 3 bikes together here at the shop. So they take full restorations, and there's a lot of preservation work has to be done. And we're going to choose what snapshot in time we're taking these bikes back to.
There are a ton of drag racing bikes here on display at the Barber Museum, including this one, ridden by John Myers when he was winning championships and tearing up the NHRA circuit. We'll talk about tearing it up. Here's a nitro bike from 1996, and when you look at the placard, it says horsepower, plenty. Right next door, though, here's a bike that doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but it does have a lot of personality. In fact, if you look really closely, you can see some writing that's actually disguised as pinstriping. Took a lot of courage to drive a bike like this. It also took a lot of courage to do this. Speedway racing, the flat tracks. It's a huge staple of motorcycle racing in America, and it's a big part of the museum here at Barber. It takes a lot of guts to race one of these on the racetrack, and it also takes a lot of guts to race one of these. It's an ice racing motorcycle from Czechoslovakia, and I tell you what, I would not want to be on the business end of one of those tires. Auto racing legend Dan Gurney once tried his hand at building a motorcycle, and it was called the Alligator. Only a handful of these bikes were ever built, but guess what? The Barber Motorsports Museum has 3 of them on display. We'll be back in a moment with more Gurney history when Topcoat's Magnificent Machines returns.
Topcoat's Magnificent Machines is brought to you by Brothers Truck Parts, your #1 source for 1947 to 87 Chevy and GMC truck restoration. AP Laser, leading the way. And by Topcoat, make life easier.
Welcome back to Topcoat's Magnificent Machines. In 1963, Dan Gurney brought Lotus to the Indianapolis 500, and he did it in this car, a Lotus 29. Jim Clark was his teammate that year, and Clark would find success 2 years later, winning the Indy 500 in 1965. Now, this car has a special place in my heart, and Lotuses have a special place here at the Barber Museum. Lee, it has to be one of the most magnificent Lotus collections in the world, one of the finest I've seen. Tell me about what you have here.
When you come in the museum, the first thing you'll see is the Mark I. And it's a replica, like I said, because the other one no longer exists. And then we have through the 6, which are very early cars that Chapman built before he got into the single-seaters. And then we go from those to some of the single-seaters like the 12, 16, up through the Indy cars and Formula 1 cars. So we have a lot to choose from.
Talk about Colin Chapman and how he started and how all of this evolved.
After the war, he was working for de Havilland and basically started fiddling with cars. So he sold cars, used cars, and he got stuck with one of them, and that was what he made the Mark I out of. And he made a trials car out of it. And then it went to the 2, and then the 3 and the 4, and then he decided to get in business. And the 4 was actually the first customer car he made, and he founded Lotus Engineering based on that order.
Well, if this Lotus collection were the whole museum, I think I could spend a day in here. But let's talk about some of the specific Lotuses you have here and some of the significant cars through Lotus's history. Well, we see the Mark I and Mark II, which are trials cars, essentially modified Austin 7s by Colin Chapman. But this, the Mark III, was really the first dedicated pavement racing car.
First road racing car, yes it was. And at this time, Chapman was still working in a garage with some friends, and they were building cars for themselves. But this was the first time they said, let's go racing on the asphalt. Because ultimately, he wanted to go work on free racing. And he knew he had to take baby steps. And this car is fabulous. It's the 4th Lotus ever built, the 3rd oldest one in existence. And just a really cool car with a lot of patina.
George Barber is the founder of this museum, and this Lotus 11 in particular is one of his favorite cars. How come?
Well, when he was 17 in 1957, this particular Lotus 11 was on the cover of Road and Track, and he said he slept with it. He loved that car so much. It's so beautiful. The Lotus 11s had just won Le Mans, so it was a very significant car for Lotus. And as a young man, he got to see this on the cover, and then a year ago, we bought it.
Now, as you look at this Lotus 16, you can see what an innovator Colin Chapman was. This car wasn't overly successful on the racetrack, but as far as designs go, this was taking major steps towards Formula 1.
It was, because he needed to do that to get to where he ultimately wanted to be with the 18. Look at the rear struts. That's a Chapman design. This is also called the Mini Van Wall, which he was involved with. Last of the front engine cars, pretty much. Had a sequential gearbox, which was unique at the time. And basically just a pretty tight little car for the day. It looks big by our standards, but it was very tight. Chapman was all about lightness. Add lightness.
And that leads us to this. This is the Lotus 18.
18. Lotus 18 gave Chapman, through a customer car, Sterling Moss, his first Formula 1 victory at Monaco.
And it's important to note, this is the first Lotus with a rear engine.
Rear engine, exactly. It started the rear engine revolution in Formula One, or helped start it, along with some other guys. But yes, definitely the first, that because it allowed the driver to be, in the middle, the motor in the back, and that's where it's been ever since.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
We talked about how the Lotus 18 was made into different iterations. It also spawned this, the 19. Tell me how this is related to the 18.
Well, basically, he just took the 18 single-seater chassis and widened it and made a sports car out of it. And it proved to be a very rigid sports car, very successful. Dan Gurney won with them. They raced in America and Europe. Great cars.
We look next door and we see a beautiful sports car, but it seems to be one that Lotus fans might want to forget.
Yeah, Chapman had a challenge. He was trying to get the Ford contract for the Ford GT, and this was his design. Unfortunately, it didn't work. It was a wishbone chassis that flexed, and Jimmy Clark was the only one talented enough to give a win in this car. And then he came out with the Lotus 40, which was awfully bad too, and the story was it was a Lotus 30 with 10 more mistakes.
This is a Formula 2 car, a Lotus 69, and it's significant not for the mechanicals, but for what's on the side of the car. Tell that story.
Yes, we all say that Chapman ruined racing for us by bringing in the big money. The big money was tobacco money. He actually had one car that had one tobacco on one side and one on the other, and he took that money and ran with it, and that's where racing gone. It's all about 200-mile-an-hour billboards now.
Time now for Top Coat's Top Pick, a machine that the Guinness Book of World Records once called the world's most expensive motorcycle. It's the Morbidelli V8. It features an exotic jewel of a V8 engine as well as an exotic price tag. Only 4 of these were ever built.
The museum's Lotus collection culminates with this beautiful array of machines from Formula One going all the way up into the 1990s. These cars and the bikes you've seen are fabulous. Unfortunately, we don't have time to show them all to you, so you're going to have to come to Alabama to see them yourself. Be sure to tune in next week when we bring you more of Top Coat's magnificent machines.